Gentlemen, I have a very exciting invitation to extend to you. If you are interested in taking this practice of designing the next year of your life to the next level so that you can experience the most meaningful, fulfilling, and prosperous year of your life in the year of 2021, then I invite you to join me and a group of other men from around the world who are designing the best year of their life for a free 90-minute workshop that I'm going to be running on Wednesday, December 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That's New York City time. And don't worry if you can't attend it live. We're going to be making this replay available. And you can register for this free workshop at doinnerwork.com/resources. Now, the reason why I'm doing this, it's twofold. Over the past few years, Brian and I have been doing these Design the Next Year of Your Life podcasts that have proven to be of the most popular episodes we do each year. And you guys love the episodes, but have also said that sometimes when you're left to your own devices, you don't always follow through with it. So this is a chance to get some additional accountability and support to help you think through what you really want for the next year. It will also give you access to other men who are doing this inner work, and you will also be able to connect with these guys in our Facebook group, The Great Man Within Podcast, as we look to build and reinforce this global community that we've already started in the Facebook group of men doing inner work. So the Facebook group is The Great Man Within Podcast. It's for men only. We've already got a few hundred men that are in there doing the inner work. And you can go to doinnerwork.com/resources to register for that free 90-minute workshop. We're going to be reinforcing some of the key lessons from this episode today and some new exercises for you to unpack where you've been in 2020 so that you can clearly outline your game plan for the year of 2021. Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Brian. Welcome to the Great Man Podcast.
Well, here we are, nearing the end of one of the most important years in human history. Our entire world was bound by a similar experience, and for the first time in humankind, we had the technology that allowed us to witness and communicate with other parts of the world as we were all going through the same thing. So in a strange sense, our collective hardship illuminated one truth that we sometimes forget. While we are different in so many ways, we share one undeniable similarity. We are all human. And hopefully we can remember that as we look to evolve and improve upon our humanity in the new year ahead, 2021. And as is the case with anything, big improvements always start at the local level. And in this case, the local level is you. So let's get you ready to live the most meaningful, fulfilling, and prosperous year of your life in 2021. Do you know what it would mean for you to have the most meaningful, fulfilling, and prosperous year of your life? What would that look like for you? What experiences would you want to have? What skill sets would you want to develop? What new level will you take your work and career? What relationships would you want to forge and deepen? What relationships would you want to leave behind? See, these are big questions that most people don't give space or time to explore in an intentional way, which is why they drift from one year to the next without much changing. And those years lead to decades, decades lead to lifetimes of feeling unfulfilled. But you, on the other hand, are living the great man within you, so you have bigger plans than that. And today's episode on designing the next year of your life is engineered to help you execute on those plans. And this has become an annual ritual for Brian and I. These episodes always seem to be some of our most popular, so we hope you enjoy this next installment. So in today's episode, we're going to start with 8 key distinctions between how a good man views life versus how a great man approaches life, and the one key characteristic, the one trait that you need to embody to shift from good man to great man. We'll go over a 15-minute exercise that helps you to do an inventory of your standout moments from 2020, because, as Maya Angelou says, how can you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been? We'll go over 2 key questions to ask yourself to help illuminate and clarify what you want for the year ahead. And then finally, how to choose the one-word theme that guides your 2021. Enjoy today's episode on Designing the Next Year of Your Life, 2021. All right, bud. I don't know how many people are going to be shedding a tear when the calendar rolls into 2021. I know more than a few people are more than happy to say good riddance to the year 2020. Are you one of those guys?
This podcast has started a lot like 2020 has been. A few rough starts. We're not sure how it's going yet. Dude, 2020, it's been a thing, huh? It has been a thing. Per your suggestion, I listened to our last year's podcast about designing the next year of our life. And it was hilarious because we were so unaware of what was about to happen.
We were so hopeful.
So we were so hopeful. And something we were joking around about is all these corporate vision statements of Vision 2020.
Right.
Right. And this has been anything but what we could have seen coming.
Totally.
Am I ready to say good riddance to it? I'm ready for coronavirus to be eradicated. I'm ready to be able to connect with friends and family in a way that I haven't been able to this year. But man, 2020 has also brought a lot of lessons to the surface. And I think the first one for me, and this is a theme that I've heard a lot of people saying in conversation with them, is that like 2020 has really highlighted what actually matters in our lives. And that much has been true. And I'm continuing to explore it given the constraints in which we're currently living.
Yeah, man. I think one of the things that's been really clear to me is in 2020, it's exposed the difference between people who have done inner work and have the foundation of inner work and how they experienced the year of 2020 and the people who don't have a foundation of inner work. The gap is big, right? Because the very nature of doing inner work is you learn how to disconnect your attachments to the outside world and needing external conditions to be perfect. Because clearly 2020, the year was anything but perfect. And so when you're building your foundation on something much more solid, secure, which is an inner sense of peace, your purpose, what's important to you, then when the world outside rocks you, yeah, you feel pain. But at the same point in time, it also makes you stronger, right? It actually, it drives you deeper inward for you to go and ask deeper questions about what matters. For the folks who haven't had that foundation of inner work, I've seen a lot of suffering. You know what I mean? I've seen a lot of people's, obviously, businesses go down, loss of lives, inconveniences, feelings of isolation and suffocation. Those are real things that I know I've experienced too in many regards, but I'm coming out of this year feeling as strong as I've ever been. And I think the dividing line oftentimes is, do we have that foundation of inner work? So I don't know if that's been an experience for you as well.
Yeah, I think prior to doing inner work, there's always an expectation of what things should be. And when something like a pandemic hits us in the face, clearly that doesn't meet, quote, what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And the inner work has allowed me and a lot of the guys that we work with to just experience it for what it is. This is the reality that we're living in now. These are the constraints that we live with. Now, what do we want to do with that?
Yeah.
As opposed to, this isn't right. This needs to go away. This is ridiculous. I can't believe we're doing this. That's what I hear the other people that haven't experienced the inner journey yet. They're just looking at this and saying, this is not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've talked about this for months now, but Viktor Frankel and A Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankel, Holocaust survivor, spent 3 years in concentration camps. He's the one who said, when you can no longer change a situation, you are then forced or challenged to change yourself. And he was in a situation that was unchangeable, right? He had all his freedoms taken from him. He had his family taken from him. He couldn't choose when to eat or to sleep. His entire external world was controlled by Nazis. The only thing that he had control over was his inner state of being. And he chose to stay alive because he knew that if he was to survive that situation, then he would have stories to tell. And that's exactly what he did. And his books and his teachings have healed millions of people over the course of these last number of decades. So if you think about someone who's been in the worst of circumstances can do it, so can we. And I think one of the silver linings of a pandemic like this is it really exposed the areas of people's lives that weren't working anyway, but it just amplified and it magnified. So it's no longer ignorable. Like people who dislike their jobs, but kind of can put up with it when everything else is going well. Well, when like all of your other freedoms are taken from you, then it's like amplified, like this job sucks. Now you're forced to confront, am I willing to work another 30 years in this job? Or am I willing to stay in a relationship that's unfulfilling for another 10 or 15 years? Because now it's really come to light, like how much I am suffering here. And I hope that the people who are experiencing or have experienced that will take the message, like the 2x4 on the forehead or the Mack truck that they've been hit by, these anti-drift messages, wake up from drift messages, to say, I am now ready to make meaningful change in my life. And if you're one of those people, that's why we're here doing this episode on how to design the best year of your life.
Michael Singer wrote the book Untethered Soul, and he talks about how this moment that is in front of us right now, you and I doing this podcast right now together, this moment is 2.8 billion years in the making. And who the hell are we to say this moment isn't right?
Right.
It takes a certain hubris to say, wait a second, maybe this isn't all about me. And that's not to downplay a lot of the suffering that this pandemic has caused. But it also, like Viktor Frankl, it gives us a choice to see things in a different way. And I think that's what you're talking about. And I know for me, Dominic, I spent 3 months living with my girlfriend's parents along with her.
God bless you.
And God bless me. And that's the feeling I think most people would have. And going into it, I had, because I was open to this is the reality that we're in. I now have a more connected relationship with her parents than I've ever had with any partner before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now if I had sat at their house for 3 months bemoaning that I'm not in New York, that I don't have the freedoms that I typically have, I'm not going out with my friends anymore, business is down and different, like that 3 months would have sucked and probably would have bred resentment.
Yes.
And so we have a choice, right? And that is now a blessing. Now I can call up her mom or dad on the phone just to chat. That's cool.
Yep.
And I think that can be looked at a much larger level.
What you're saying reminds me of a statement that was revolutionary for me when I heard it. And it's so subtle, but it's powerful. It's where your attention goes, your energy flows. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. So like when you ended up moving into Becca's parents' house for 3 months, attention could have gone to look at all of the freedoms that are taken from me. I'm in someone else's house. It's not, I never feel like I'm at home. I'm always borrowing something or, like taking something from someone else. You could have done all of that. And then your energy would have flowed there, feeling a sense of lack, feeling a sense of resentment, feeling a sense of like, when is this going to be over? Instead, your attention flowed to, how about this is an opportunity for me to deepen my relationship with the woman I love and the parents who put her here on earth, and developing a relationship and rapport with them. All of a sudden the energy flows there. And now you have this foundation of an experience of depth with them, with her. It's not to say that there weren't moments where you didn't feel a little bit confined. You didn't have your own space. Of course you had those things. We're not like Pollyanna about this stuff, but your energy coming out of that experience was one of you had just grown, not suffered.
That's exactly it. And this is not I'm glad you brought up the Pollyanna thing because this can sound like a very feel good all the time. And that's not reality. There are a lot of times where I felt like I wanted to be back in Brooklyn. There's a lot of times where I'm like, I just want to eat on my own schedule. There's a lot of times that it felt like that. But something that we did when we went there, and I think this is a good exercise for anybody going in to experience something new, or they're not sure what the reality is going to be, is we set an intention. And the intention was when we leave, we don't know when we're going to leave, but when we leave, we want to leave with hugs. We want to leave with gratitude.
Nice.
And that's what it was, man. There was hugs. There was tears. They were like, we can't wait for you to come back. Right. And we felt the same way. As a matter of fact, we did go back 3 weeks after we had come back to New York.
Nice.
Right. So that, I think even that intention allowed us to cut through those times where we felt restricted or we felt like we couldn't, do what we wanted to do.
I love that. And I think that's a good precursor into this conversation today about what is the intention you're setting for the year of 2021. So one of the things that I like to do as I look forward into the coming year, because I've been doing a lot of future envisioning. For like probably the past decade, I've gotten really intentional about what do I want out of the year ahead. And I always ask this one question that helps me to focus on it. If the next year of your life could be the most meaningful, fulfilling, and prosperous year of your life, then what would it look like? Most people aren't thinking about it that way, right? Because a lot of people are still stuck in the pain, the turmoil, all the unpredictability of this year. But I like to look at the year ahead and always ask the question, if it could be the most meaningful, fulfilling, prosperous year of your life, then what would it look like? What experiences would you want to have? What skill sets would you want to develop? And that really starts to orient your mind, again, where your thoughts go, your energy flows. When your thoughts go to prosperity, meaningfulness, fulfillment, then your energy naturally aligns around that. And even though this year, my best laid plans were blown to smithereens, this will go down as one of the most critical, powerful, amazing years of my life. And I'm fortunate to be able to say that because I know a lot of people aren't in that situation, right? But I can say that this is one of the years that's going to set up the rest of my life in the most powerful of ways because of this future planning that I've done, not just last year, but the years that have preceded it. So going into our conversation today, we're going to be giving you two pieces of an exercise to help you envision your ideal future. The first part of it is going to be looking at where you've been, right? Like, where have you been over this previous year in 2020? Because as Maya Angelou says, if you don't know where you've been, how can you know where you're going? And then the second part of that exercise is then looking forward into that future and envisioning the ideal, meaningful, prosperous, fulfilling year of your life.
I don't know about you, Dominic, but it feels like time is very elastic and has been a strange thing in 2020. I remember recording a podcast with John O'Connor, and I remember that podcast because later that day, or maybe the next day, we were leaving to go down to Becca's parents' place. And we were talking about what we landed on in that podcast was this building of the foundation.
Yep.
That feels like 100 years ago, and it feels like yesterday.
Yeah.
Becca and I, we used to have conversations not that long ago about like what a new relationship this was for us, and realized the other day it's been 18 months. It's been a year and a half. We're like, what? How did
wow.
Unbelievable that has happened. And so this time in the pandemic, spending so much time at home, time has been a really interesting thing. And when I went back to reflect and preparing for this podcast, looking through my old photos and some of the other things, there's been so much richness, and I forgot about most of it. And so looking back and reflecting on some of those lessons, some of those memories, some of those activities, some of those relationships has been really powerful and makes my pandemic year, my 2020 pandemic year, feel that much more fulfilling.
I'm glad you said that, man, because I think what's underweighted when people think about New Year's resolutions or what they want for the year ahead is the look back. And you cannot skip the look back because you'd be shocked at how much has actually happened. And you said this in last year's podcast, so it's important to say it again. Oftentimes when we're growing, you forget that your growth becomes the new baseline. And that baseline, moves up quite a bit. So, you forget that, holy shit, like earlier this year was the year that I finally conquered my weight, which has always fluctuated. Or this was the year where I started my first business. This was the year that we started the Great Man Mastermind. It's very easy to forget that because we've been in it for 7 months. But that's a revolutionary step for us in our work with, moving towards 10 million men is getting this nucleus together. So that baseline can be forgotten unless you go back and look at it. And then when you look at that, all the things that you started this year, that you built this year, it gives you a sense of how much can be accomplished in a very short period of time, like a 12-month period of time.
Yeah.
All right. So before we go into the look back, there is one thing that I think would be helpful for the men who are listening, an exercise for the men who are listening to associate with. I've done a lot of thinking about the distinctions between what a good man is and what a great man is. If you think about where Brian and I always start, some of the fundamental podcasts that we've done around the number one enemy to living a powerful life is about drift. And that at the end of your life, the definition of hell is that the person that you became meets the person that you could have become, right? The person that you became because you lived life too safely, you decided to go with what was too comfortable and predictable. It was at the expense of the man that you could have become, which is the great man within us, right? That great man within is that man that you could have become. We don't want you to end up taking your last breath, feeling like you left chips on the table. We want you to be fully integrated with that great man inside of you who knows how to live a life of purpose, who has courage and allows you to feel that great sense of inner strength and power inside.
And this is one of the number one places where we see guys wake up, is that they turn 30, they turn 40, they turn 50. There's some sort of milestone that makes them reflect. It makes them do the look back, which, by the way, I love that term, Dominic.
Yeah,
it makes them do the look back just because of course, I'm turning 40 years old. I'm going to do a look back. I'm going to reflect on my past. And then they realize, what the fuck was I just, like, how did I get to where I'm at right now? It's a great first question to moving from even being a good man to that great man that you're talking about.
Absolutely. And what our efforts are here is to wake you up sooner, right? So it's like, instead of you waking up at 50, we want to wake you up at 30 or wake you up at 20, and instead of like these years or decades going by, let's get you right now to ask those deeper questions, because the longer you wait, the harder it is to change. And I've seen so many fires in men's eyes burn out, never to be rekindled again. We never want that to happen. And by the very nature of you listening to the show, like, it will not happen to you. But let me do some distinctions here about the difference between a good man and a great man. And Bri, as I'm going through this, like, any of these, jump in on and just like provide your perspective if anything resonates with you. So
that's what I do on this podcast, Dominic.
You just did it.
That's my whole role.
That's very true. All right. A good man protects what he has. He's built something. He's successful. He's got a family. He's got these things. He protects what he has, and he's probably unwilling to take risks because he doesn't want to lose what he already has. But a great man is willing to pursue his fullest potential, and oftentimes is willing to put things at risk because he knows that there's something deeper calling. A good man is willing to make incremental change in the name of improvement in his life, but it's got to be measured. It's got to be somewhat small. And we are not against incremental changes, because if you make enough incremental changes over time, it creates major tipping points. But a great man is someone who is willing to change everything in his life in pursuit of his purpose. And I want to pause here on this. It doesn't mean that you're not a great man if you're not willing to change everything in your life right now, right? Because you may not know what your purpose is right now. But as you start to make more and more of these incremental changes that do create major tipping points that allow you to see what it is that you're meant to do here on this earth, the legacy that you want to leave behind, you may find yourself confronted one day with selling the business that you spent 15, 20 years building, or leaving behind a corporate career that you spent 30 years in, or maybe leaving a relationship that is no longer serving you because there's something deeper that is calling you. And it takes courage. It takes guts to be able to change everything in your life to pursue your purpose.
We put these unconscious limits on ourselves that we don't realize is there, that doesn't allow us to live that greatest life. And we don't, the scary part again, we don't even know that they're there. Of course, I can't leave this job because I can't do all these other things. These aren't conscious thoughts. They're just things that keep us in the running the same software that we've always run, and without knowing what else is there. This point of reflection, like understanding what good to great looks like, is that point to rewrite the software and say, wait a second, like, why am I in this job? Wait a second, what do I really want?
Absolutely. And listen, the world needs more good men for sure, but you're probably going to end up at the end of your life feeling like there was more in your tank than you tapped. And because you're listening to the show, we want to help you tap that greatness. So a good man has a sharpened mind, right? He works on getting smarter, intellectual. He reads the books, but a great man has a sharpened mind and an open heart. That's a big one. A lot of men have shut down their hearts, haven't been able to feel because we've been told that emotions are weakness. A great man knows how to tap his mind and his heart. A good man is oftentimes the highest performer in his immediate circle of friends or in business. But a great man actively surrounds himself with other impressive, inspiring, and high-performing men, right? So sometimes I find that like a lot of guys become addicted to just being the smartest guy, the most impressive guy, like being that. And I know that I was that guy for many years of my life. But when I started to get more confident in myself internally, I was like, no, I want to be around the guys who are more impressive than me, or at least as impressive as me in other areas of their life that they can open me up to that I don't have perspective on and can teach me something. And sometimes that takes courage to surround yourself with guys like that because it means bringing a certain level of humility.
Dominic, so you mentioned the performance, either being the best performer versus being around other great performers. The one before that, related to having a sharpened mind versus an open heart. I'm curious where you're at on that one.
If you remember, maybe you did listen to the episode last year, my one word for 2020 was love. And, for the last 2 years, you and I have been in that men's group, in our Monday night men's group together, where we've worked deeply about our emotions, developing emotional fluency, which is the ability to feel an emotion, to name the emotion, to sit with that emotion, to express that emotion, and then to shift the emotion if desired. 3 years ago, I had a hard time even knowing what it was that I was feeling. Remember, like those first 3 months of men's group were torment because it was like, I don't know what I'm feeling. What are you feeling in your body right now? I don't feel anything. A lot of guys can really relate to that. And last year, cracking open myself and learning how to feel those emotions really led me to say, I want to know what my heart now desires. And this entire year has been about feeling into the things that I love, which have informed my business decisions, my romantic relationships, my friendships. And regularly, whenever I make a big decision, I not only consult what feels right for my mind, but absolutely, like the clincher is, what does my heart feel?
I think this year has been such a growth for you in that area. I mean, since I've known you, I've seen 1,000 books around you and learning the latest and greatest techniques and tools. But this year, I've really started to feel you in that heart space. And I think even more importantly, I've seen you make decisions from that place that maybe don't have the most logical, like, why would you do that? But yet you're still able to do that and do that quickly. I've seen a huge amount of growth in you in that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, quickly. And like when you have an open heart, I feel like decisions get made more quickly, more definitively. There's less second guessing. When it's only relying on my mind, there was always that doubt. There was always that churning. There was always like a long process to figure everything out. And I'd rather move with much more confidence and quickness. So a few more here. I'm just going to read through the rest of these and then maybe we'll move on to the look back. A good man thrives on his own. A great man thrives with other great men, right? If you want to go fast, go on your own. But if you want to go far, go together. So a great man surrounds himself and thrives with other great men. A good man surrounds himself with men who are like him. Like guys who maybe look like you, sound like you, have the same kind of job, that are easy to get along with. And that's cool. But a great man surrounds himself with men who can teach him something. And that oftentimes requires men who come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different faith, different races and religions or sexual orientations, different age groups. Great men are willing to learn from other great men that don't look like them. And oftentimes that requires you to get outside your comfort zone. Last two here, Brian, then we'll check in with you is a good man suppresses his anger so it doesn't detonate on others, but oftentimes at the expense of detonating on himself internally, right? He will jump on the grenade of his anger or swallow it and eat a shit sandwich so as not to blow up on someone else. But a great man learns how to feel his anger, harness it, and express his anger from a resourceful place, which allows him to lead from a place of power because a boundary has been crossed or a value has been impeded upon. And a great man knows how to protect that and speak up for it. And then finally, a good man is respected, right? The world needs more good men, but a great man is admired. And there are far fewer people who fall into that category of admiration. I've enjoyed being respected, but one of the things that I've noticed that people have said to me is, Dominic, when you've spoken out about your trials, your tribulations, your hardships, I admire that. And I listen to you now because of that, because you're human and you show me that side. And other great men share those parts of their lives as well. And Bri, you've done a service to this community about testicular cancer and chlamydia on the same day and how that changed your life. And then starting a business and then having to shut it down and then to navigate that, but then to start another business, which is becoming really successful and powerful. You're admired by many men for how you've gone to bat for yourself in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. That's great, man. right? That's your great man living.
I like those descriptions, Dominic, of good to great. And what's important to understand that those are endpoints. And there's a whole journey in between them. So when I hear about, hanging out with people that are like you versus hanging out with other people with different perspectives as a great man, it's not like I can just start doing that tomorrow and feel great about it. And, oh, great, this is my great man. There's a whole journey that happens from being with people that I feel comfortable with, that I feel safe with. And it takes something, right? It takes something to move from that good, which is a good man. I think we would all agree on that, to this great man. And what's beautiful, and it's even hard to describe in words, is that once you go through that journey, once I've gone through in some of these journeys, and I've still got a lot more to go, we build up a tolerance, we build up our muscles that give us more fulfillment when we're living in that great man energy. So when I'm going to meet new people now that maybe don't share a similar perspective, old feelings of I need to protect my beliefs, I need to protect myself physically, right? Those start to melt away, and it doesn't happen just by deciding overnight that, great, I'm going to go start doing that. There are first steps that we can take, but it is a journey, right? To go from good to great.
Absolutely. It is a journey. And to that point about the journey, if you think about what divides good man from great man, like the bridge that is built for you to step from good to great is courage, right? It takes courage to move from protecting what you have to living your life in pursuit of your purpose. It takes courage to go from surrounding yourself with men who are just like you, who speak just like you, have the same background as you, to going to groups of men who may be different from you and challenge you and make you think about your beliefs differently, cause you to learn a new way of being. It takes courage to walk across that bridge. And the reason why we bring this up is because whatever it is that you want for yourself in the year of 2021 is going to require courage. We did a meditation last year at the end of the Design Your Future, Design the Next Year of Your Life. Instead of doing a meditation this year, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you to join us on December 16th at 7 p.m. New York City time for a 90-minute session on designing the next year of your life. So you have a chance to meet men from around the world who are going to be working on designing the next year of their life. And then we're going to do a 30-day challenge to start the new year on courage, right? Like 30 days of courage challenge. And I'll be the one who's helping to design those courage challenges. And you'll also have a chance to participate in that as well.
Dominic, that 90-minute session that you're doing on designing your life, first of all, very exciting. Very excited that's happening. 2, are any chance that people are picking a one-word theme as part of that?
Oh yeah, we're going to be picking a one-word theme, and we'll talk about that today too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, here we go. All right.
Yeah.
One of my favorite annual rituals.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to force feed part of that one word, which is going to be courage. My one-word theme for next year is courage.
Yours is courage. Okay.
And the men who are going to be going through this program are going to get a taste of that, but each guy will also get to pick their own one word for the year. So yeah, and you're going to be able to register for that at doinnerwork.com/resources. I'll link that in the show notes, but you can register for that one day event or for that one evening webinar event, doinnerwork.com resources.
But you're saying that your word for 2021 is courage.
Absolutely.
Wow. When you think about courage, where do you think that will take you from where you're at now to where you're going to go through 2021?
Yeah, well, for the men who've been listening to this show, like they know that my life has changed dramatically. My business has changed dramatically over the last 3 or 4 months, where most of my income came from corporate work, shut that down so that I could focus 110% of my time and energy on this 10 million man mission. And so it's going to require courage for me to figure out what are the new products and services. It's going to take courage for me to launch a few programs that I really want to throw my weight behind. Like one of them is going to be helping men to break their porn addiction or compulsiveness around porn, because that's one of the things I get emailed and messaged about the most. I'm also going to be creating a program for women who want to talk to their men about porn, because so many women message me about my son's got a problem, my boyfriend's got a problem, my husband's got a problem, he feels distant. And it's going to take courage for me to go out, create those programs, because I've never really offered something like that in a video format, like on the interwebs, and speaking out that publicly and being known as the porn guy. That's going to require a lot of courage on my part, but I have a feeling, a deep sense of knowing that it's going to do a service. And bro, I'm going to Trojan horse the fuck out of all this men's work in those programs. things like meditation and breath work and all the other stuff that we talk about are necessities in helping someone break a compulsion like porn and taking it out of secrecy into brighter places. So it's a great first step for a lot of men who are not yet on this inner work path to get them into our world and be on the journey with us.
Do you want to be known as the porn guy?
No, I don't want to be known as the porn guy. So I don't want to be branded as that, but I definitely do want to, like, I would happily be known as like a champion for men who are interested in conquering porn.
Got it. So it's not the porn guy, but it is the courage that it's going to take to be known as the guy that speaks out about this publicly.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as you start talking about porn, a lot of doors close.
Right.
A lot of doors close. And I found that out quite quickly. Like I've lost a lot of business in the corporate space, big money, with relationships that I've had for 15 years. As soon as like porn becomes your thing and then you market it heavily, that closes doors. So I'm being asked to summon new levels of courage to go into these places and also to not know like what these paths forward are for the next few months as I sort it out, and to have the courage to watch no money come in for a period of time, maybe. And so that's why my one word for next year is going to be courage.
I love it.
Yeah. So let's do this. Now that we've talked about like what my one word is for the year, we do need to look back on your year, right? Like we do want to do a look back, and Brian and I have a few ways that you can do just a 15-minute exercise that will help you to see where you've been over the last year, so you can decide, like, so you can start to see like how much growth you've made, but also decide what you want to carry forward in 2021, momentum you've built, and also what you want to leave behind. So a couple of quick things that you can do to see where you've been. Brian came up with this idea, which is just go through your camera scroll on your phone by month and look at the pictures that you've taken. It will be illuminating how many places you've been. We'll talk about like what you saw in a moment here, Bri. But number two, go through your calendar. Look at like all of the things that have been on your calendar for this past year. You'll start to see like events and meetings that you've been in. Maybe it won't be as dynamic as other years because there's probably not as much travel because we were at home. But go through your journal also. If you're a journaler, look like some of your entries for the year. And one of the other ways to do this is if like you're someone who posts on social media, take a look at what you posted and what you posted about. It will give you a pretty strong sense of where you've been and what you were talking about and your mood and temperament over the course of the year. So Brian, with that said, what were some of the ahas like that you had a chance to see that you'd forgotten about?
Yeah, man. So let me pop open the old calendar here. But New Year's Eve, we were in Joshua Tree in California.
Remember that?
And so seeing that and just what's really cool is when I look at these photos, I can feel what I felt then. And I was excited to be in a new place. One of the things I love to do is just explore new places. And that feeling, and again, at that time, having no idea that was going to come to a screeching halt in about 3 months.
Yeah, right.
And so when I look back on that, there was a lot of joy there. I look back at, I've been mentoring a few college students that are entrepreneurs, and it was their first time in New York. They came here, and it was one of the first groups that we hosted here at the apartment, and Becca helped put all that together. So it was the first time that Becca and I got to host some people that came over, and that was beautiful. And as I do this, I'm doing it right now, as I flip through a lot of these photos, I'm remembering what of these things have really brought me joy. Like, why did I take a photo at that point in time of that moment? And so more so because I haven't been very active on social media this year. That wasn't a huge story to be told there. But when I look through my camera roll, these are the unfiltered, not best shots, but have a ton of meaning to them. It was a fun activity to do this.
Well, so yeah, one more thing to really provide clarity for our listeners would be, as you're going through this exercise of looking back, whether it's through your camera roll, whether it's through your journal, your gratitude list, your calendar, you're looking for specific things. You're looking for standout moments. So when I say standout moments, we're talking about beginnings and endings, highs and lows, triumphs, tribulations. Right? You're looking for new relationships that entered your life and maybe relationships that ended or took a different turn. So you're looking for these standout moments that created some sort of emotional experience for you. Like a few of the things that came up for me were I live in New York City here, and I remember the very beginning of like the racial revolution here in the city, Black Lives Matter, and protests that started and some of the riots that occurred as a result of it. But I also remember, as that followed, some of the amazing conversations that we had on this podcast and with people of color in our lives and the books that I ended up reading. Our men's group, we ended up growing our men's group by 2 men of color who came into the men's group and shared their perspectives about what was going on and opened the kimono about the hardships of their lives and helped us to understand at a deeper level, and had like these candid conversations where they were able to express like anger and emotion towards us for just waking up to this thing. And I remember feeling like this year I took a big step forward in my maturity around racial awareness, which is something that like was a new beginning in my world.
Yeah, I think you talked about beginnings, endings. Also look at like some highlights. You asked me before, like, what are some books that were really impactful this year? And White Fragility was one of those.
Yes.
And this was a year certainly of my awakening and still grappling with what that looks like and what my actions are. That's been a huge one this year. And also growth. I look at like what's helpful when I look back at some of these photos is what growth has happened. Physically, my plants have grown. My plants look amazing right now. All of them.
Yeah,
except the one you gave me. The bonsai's dead. If anybody has any tips on how to keep a bonsai alive, let me know, because that was awful. But the rest
mine died too.
of the plants, yours is dead too. Dominic was very sweet. He got himself a bonsai and also got me a bonsai for my birthday, and I subsequently killed it, but all the other plants are doing pretty well. So
you need to like hire a full-time human being to actually just like tend specifically to your bonsai. It doesn't seem like to be any other way.
A plant sitter. It's amazing. But anyway, yes. So going through these, the highs, the lows, the endings, the beginnings, and the growths were really, really big for me.
I mean, I think about like some of the things that I was able to put forward here. I wrote my book this year and I released the book this year, even though there was a fiasco around the book and the quality of the book, like it was still a major experience of writing a book, producing a book, and then also feeling really good about how I handled the disaster that was my book production.
Are you calling it a book these days?
A Bach. My Bach.
It's a Bach.
Yeah, it's the Bach.
The best Bach you ever wrote.
The podcast has grown in terms of its listenership by 500% this year. We've 5 times the amount of downloads that we had in 2019 to this year. Thank you to our listeners and to those of you who have been not only listening, but sharing it to others. That's extraordinary growth. One of the things that actually was, I think, one of the most joyful experiences I had this year was witnessing my sister, who is special needs. And if you guys have listened to the show, you know how much like my sister is at the direct center of my heart. She's like the happiest person I know. She's the most on purpose person I've ever met. And what I mean by that is like she loves babies and her whole life is built around, for 20 years, she's worked at a daycare center, the same place, the Goddard School, for 20 years after she graduated school, working with infants 6 weeks to 12 months old. And then during COVID, that was shut down. The Goddard School was shut down. And you would think when that's stripped away from my sister that like she would be gutted, right? You would think that she'd be upset, maybe wallowing. The opposite happened. Mary ended up throwing like her love into puzzles. And she's like this puzzle phenom. She ended up like doing, I think, 50 puzzles during that period of time, sending photos and like getting them glued together, sending like framed puzzles to all of her favorite people. She won these puzzle contests where like 30 puzzles worth thousands of dollars were sent to her house. She kept herself so busy, and it just showed me how resilient she was. But then the Goddard School gave her some bad news. They went bankrupt and they were gone. And we were all like, as a family, really scared for my sister. And I ended up going on Facebook and I wrote like a help wanted ad. And I was just like, hey, the hottest free agent to hit the market since LeBron James, like, here's my sister Mary. She's the baby whisperer. She's changed 32,000 diapers in her illustrious career. Who's going to be the lucky one to hire her? And dude, like you saw this, I see you smiling, like that thing caught fire. And I had probably 100 people reach out with like babysitting offers and whatever. Within 4 days, Mary ended up getting an interview at the Kids Academy in Midland Park, New Jersey, got a job offered on the spot. Not only is Mary like killing it there, she ended up getting 4 other people who lost their job at the Goddard School, jobs at the Kids Academy. My dad calls it the Goddard School at the Kids Academy now. And Mary's this huge source of inspiration for everyone. So I had a chance to see and witness her resiliency. And when I talk about love being my word for last year, when my sister lost her job, that one word came to mind and said, I'm going to show my love for Mary in this gesture of helping shine a light on her in a very visible way that she wouldn't be able to do on her own. And as her brother, I feel so fucking proud, man, that I was able to assist her in finding a new home that's even closer to her. She's getting paid well. She's doing overtime. She's a superstar at that place. They really appreciate and respect her. And she's the one who's making all that happen. But to be able to be a bridge in that, a cause in that, was one of my highlights of this year.
Dude, it's love. And I can see even as you're telling this story, how much fulfillment that brought to you. Like, Mary has been such a shining light and teacher for you. It's been so cool to see.
Thanks, man. She's just been a gift. So are there any other things, man, in your life that like you wanted to look back on and just witness either as like a standout moment, a loss, a win? Actually, dude, you can't not reflect on 2020 without, you ended up shutting down Beam, your first business. You went through the dip of like, who am I? I'm a failure. I'm a this, I'm a that. And then you started Vahila, the business around COVID testing. And now you have these crazy Hollywood clients. The business is like making all sorts of money in the first couple months of existence. I mean, you've had a massive year of endings and beginnings.
I think it's been an unbelievable journey. And what I was searching for in that dip around what do I stand for? What do I really, really care about? This year was the year that some of the pieces started coming together.
Yep. And
when I look at what my desires were in the past, when I do a reflection, and I see that like after 9/11, I wanted to join the FBI, went to work at the FBI. After I went through a sexual health experience, I created a sexual health company because that was such a crappy experience. When I see COVID and I stepped in to help with a COVID solution, I have a belief that's been solidified in this time, which is that people are at their best. People are fucking awesome when they feel safe. And that means safe physically. That means safe psychologically. It means secure internally. People are awesome. You and I have seen that. We saw that at Wild Vessel when the women in the room felt safe because they weren't being preyed upon.
We see it in the mastermind with guys who feel safe to actually disclose what's going on in their, and
Yes.
Dr. Miles talked about this on our podcast with him, where he was like, I was shocked at how many straight men are willing to be open and emotional with groups with other men. I've never seen it before. It's because the guys feel safe to open up.
Feel safe. And we've built containers over the last couple of years, Dominic, that create that level of safety that is mostly unseen in this world.
100%.
That is what I'm most proud of. And yes, the Hollywood clients, and yes, the business is going well, and my relationship is awesome with Becca. Like, that all feels amazing. And it feels so good to have this core to recognize that in me, that's something I desire to create for the rest of my life.
Love it. Love it. That's so big. All right, fellas, unique situation here. This is going to be Dominic rolling solo for the remainder of this episode because Brian and I planned this a little bit poorly. We didn't leave enough time for us to do the entire episode, and Brian now has a business commitment, but we are near the end of this episode, so I'm going to take you the rest of the way. Now, we've just finished looking back at where you've been in 2020. At all of your wins, your losses, your triumphs, your tribulations, the beginnings, the endings, where you've grown, maybe where you've regressed, relationships that began, relationships that ended, and everything in between. And now I want you to ask yourself the question, what do I want to leave behind in 2020 that no longer is serving me? Maybe you had some complaints about your life, about your romantic partner, about how the pandemic was treating you, that you're just done complaining about, and you want to leave it here in 2020. Old habits or patterns or behaviors, right? Compulsiveness, the things that harm you in some way, that just no longer are serving you, that you leave behind in 2020. I say, I commit to not doing that thing, not bringing it forward into this fresh new year, a new way of being, right? That requires some courage. And also, what did you start this year that you want to bring forward into 2021? Momentum that has been built, new habits that have been formed. For me, a big part of what I started in 2020 was speaking my fucking truth, talking about the things that aren't quite popular, that may get my paychecks taken away, temporarily speaking. those temperamental paychecks that I don't want anyway anymore. I'm going to be speaking with a lot more courage from my heart versus what I think is going to intellectually land. I'm going to be speaking truth that may turn people off sometimes or trigger people in honor of what I know to be true from my core. And I've never done that before. I've usually spoken from a place of, how can I have a message that's appealing to everybody? These are fundamental changes that I'm making, that I'm carrying forward and amplifying in 2021. What are you bringing into 2021? And the last piece of this is to take a look forward into the year ahead and define the one-word theme that is going to be your umbrella for the year. Now, the reason why Brian and I love these one-word themes is because there's so much evidence about goals failing, New Year's resolutions, people not sticking to. And oftentimes, like the goals that we set, like losing a certain amount of weight, making a certain amount of money, or maybe starting a business, all of those goals, you have to remember, all goals are always because you are in search of some sort of feeling. You want to make the money so that you can have financial freedom. You want to start the business so you can feel a deeper sense of purpose and autonomy in your life. Those are really why you're starting those things, going after those things. And what I've found is that by maintaining one word, it gives you extraordinary flexibility in any given moment to be able to make a decision from the place of, does this honor that word or not? Like I shared earlier, when my sister lost her job, and that was scary for me and for everyone in our family, I could have easily gone into panic mode or to worry mode, but I was like, how can my one word of love show up and help my sister? So I decided to honor her in the best way I could by using my platforms of social media and some of my skills of being able to, shine a light on people and do so in a way that allowed her to get greater visibility. I can't tell you how many times I've leveraged that word love this year. When that Porngate email went out, where I sent an email out about, one of our podcast episodes, 4 alternatives to porn, when that went out by mistake to 300 of my corporate clients, because my chief operating officer mistakenly clicked the wrong box in our email server, I used love to handle that situation where she understands that that's just a mistake. That's just an administrative error. That yes, it costs us lots of money and lots of headache in the time, but she's an extraordinary human being who I wouldn't be able to do this work without. And I was able to handle that situation with love without her feeling like her job was in jeopardy or that she did something unforgivable. Love showed up in so many different ways in my life this year, in planned and unplanned ways, which is the power of one word. Years ago, Brian picked intentionality, which was the thing that brought him into meditation. It was the thing that actually brought him to come to my men's retreat for the very first time. Having one word that serves as your theme for the year helps to guide you when you're at that crossroad. What is the one word that would be the guiding light for you? And if you don't know it, then that's a perfect opportunity for you to come to the Design the Next Year of Your Life webinar that I'm going to be hosting on December 16th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, New York City time. You can register for that at doinnerwork.com/resources, doinnerwork.com/resources to register. And we're going to be doing 30 days of courage to start the new year. And a big part of that is going to be either daily emails or daily text messages, or maybe both, to help keep you on the challenge and have a system of accountability. And we're going to be in the Facebook group, the Great Man Within podcast Facebook group for men, doing this work, sharing our stories of courage, our setbacks, our obstacles, and our wins. So, as a summary for where we went today in our conversation, the difference between being a good man and living your great man within is courage, right? Oftentimes, everything you want in your life, the difference between where you are today and where you want to go is courage. And if the next year of your life is going to be the most meaningful, fulfilling, and prosperous year of your life, it is going to require courage to step from where you are to where you want to go. And the first step in that process is to look back at where you've been over this past year for those standout moments, beginnings and endings, triumphs, tribulations, relationships that began, relationships that ended, and looking through your photos, your calendar, your journal entries to help you see where you've been, and then to look forward and say, what do I want to leave behind in this year that's no longer serving me? What do I want to carry forward into the year 2021? And then what is my one word theme that is going to keep me focused throughout the year that will help me to navigate even when a pandemic blows up your best laid plans? Love had a very different meaning for me in January and February. It was more about romantic relationship. And then when pandemic blew up, it was about self-love. It's about finding love and forgiveness in many other areas of my life. And it served me well this entire year so that 2020 will become and will go down as one of the best years of my life. 2021 will be the best year of my life until 2022 comes along. And that's how I'm playing that game. And I invite you to play it with me. Final reminder, fellas, head over to doinnerwork.com/resources and join us. Register to join us for the 90-minute free workshop that we're doing on designing the next year of your life. You can join me and a group of other men from around the world who are planning to have the most meaningful, fulfilling, and prosperous year of our lives. Register at doinnerwork.com/resources. Click the link in the show notes.